Welcome to another episode of A Come Together. What's up, everyone? We are back for another solo episode. I can't believe it's already been 5 episodes since my last solo one, but cheers. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been an amazing week and a half. It's been truly, truly nuts. And I wanted to talk about some things, including obviously some breaking news over the weekend and a lot of, President Trump getting, there was a shooter rather at the White House Correspondence Dinner. And he wasn't actually, I don't think he made it to try to get it to Trump, but obviously was there for that. And actually, as of just a couple of minutes ago, it's 2:45 on April 26th on Sunday afternoon. Just a couple of minutes ago, the manifesto of the shooter, or the attempted shooter. I think he tried to shoot one person. He shot one person rather. Once one guard, Secret Service member. That's the word. And but the guy's fine. He got shot in the chest. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, thank God. And I think that was it. And the guy has been killed. I don't even think that he was expecting this to be a suicide mission as far as this manifesto goes, but it's also really interesting and important to note that the manifesto is only being released in part at the moment, as according to the New York Post 2 hours ago. And I want to read it and maybe talk about it a little bit, or at least kind of just. I think this is really interesting because this manifesto felt like it wasn't written by someone that was haunted by, you know, a chemical imbalance in their brain. This doesn't sound like someone who is on hormone blockers or is particularly unstable or unwell. And this seems to be pretty thought out and pretty intentional. And it feels a little bit more like the Luigi Mangione guy, a little bit more down his lane than, say, some kind of mass shooter or some kind of, even the kid that shot that tried to shoot Trump or that hit his ear in Butler. Um, that didn't feel like the same thing, and maybe it's because of the fact that there actually is a manifesto, and because of the fact that we can get an insight into this guy's head. His name is the alleged gunman's name is Cole Allen, and there's some crazy stuff on X about an account 2 years ago that just tweeted his name, tweeted the name Cole Allen, and that was it. And I don't think that tweet had ever been given any context. Um, but that also doesn't necessarily mean anything. Again, anything in a vacuum kind of anything in a vacuum could be portrayed or twisted however you want it to be. Just like I saw yesterday that Caroline Levitt said before, maybe an hour before the actual event happened, before the incident, she goes, it's going to be a typical Trump speech. There's going to be comedy. There's going to be great bits. There'll be shots fired. And like everyone on Twitter immediately went nuts. Like, no, are you kidding? She's in on it. But come on, man. Just choice of words, in my opinion. I feel like that's something you could apply Occam's razor to. Let's read this for a second. Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. On to why I did any of this. I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me, and I'm no longer willing to permit peda, whatever, rape, whatever is right. I guess rape is, I already said the word. And traitor. I hope YouTube doesn't take me down. And traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. So this is obviously very politically motivated. Obviously, this gentleman, this person, this teacher, I think actually is, obviously, I think he feels a lot of what the whole of a lot of the country that can't say anything feel. I really believe that's true. I think that it's very clear based on how unpopular Trump's become just a year and a half after his presidency. And apparently, by the way, this isn't just Trump. I want to make that clear. I'm actually reading this awesome book called Unstable Majorities Continue by Morris Fiorina, excuse me. And and this gentleman makes a really interesting point that it's extremely uncommon, at least in the last 20, 30 years, or maybe more, maybe 40, 50 years, to for a president to kind of make these promises that they can't really live up to. And a couple of years, and even despite whatever popularity they had going into the presidency, by the midterm, people are usually pretty disillusioned. And obviously, this seems to really strongly be the case over here. But this obviously, I think, is another step up, because this isn't something that we're saying is like, hey, you know, how come you bailed out the banks, which was really a bad enough thing as it is, and that there were no arrests. It's not as bad as a 20-year Middle Eastern war for really no stated reason, even though it's pretty bad. But I mean, we're talking about, like, I mean, I think the Epstein thing is too big to be pushed under the rug. And whether or not it's being temporarily even though the can's being kicked down the road a little bit with the Iranian war, I think that the same forces that swung the election towards Trump this past election, the same forces are going to absolutely crush the administration, and administrations to come. I think the voices on the internet are so loud, and I think that events like this reinforce that. And listen, I keep on thinking this every couple of weeks, every month or two, but I just think about how many of these really significant events, the missing scientist, the Epstein list, Trump's third this is Trump's third assassination, third would-be assassin. This is like a crazy historic time. I mean, this time period, and we've kind of, the only reason I think that we're really able to process, we don't even process it. I think that things are just so hard for so many people on a regular basis, and people are so busy with their day-to-day lives, and lives are getting harder and harder to live year after year, that people are so focused on being, on just trying to keep their head above water, that they don't really have time or effort until they kind of snap. And when you do snap, I mean, we have three assassination attempts. I mean, it's nuts, but there's been very little response from any of the representation of the people, anyone that was, like, any accountability for promises that were, made or broken. And, you know, Pam Bondi being fired might be one thing, but I don't think her replacement was much better. Um, as he steps in and goes, "We're closing the book on the Epstein case," and everyone else is like, "I cannot believe that." Like that's what got Bondi fired to begin with. Like, I mean, I mean, you can't really argue that she was like doing much else that was like bad, I guess. This is so blatant. It was so dumb, and she looked so bad. And then the guy's going to come in. It's just basically swap. It's not swapping out a policy. It's swapping out a face. And people aren't going to buy that. I don't know anyone that buys that for even a minute. Okay. Anyway, so I'm a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me, and I am no longer willing to permit whatever, and a traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel, they are targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service. They are targets only if necessary and need to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible, aka I hope they're wearing body armor, because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. And interesting that that was released, and that was actually the only case of any kind of damage was a non-lethal shot, because according to Trump, at least, last night during his post-event press conference, um, he said that if not for the body armor, that it would have been a lethal shot. So it's pretty crazy. He seemed to have thought that through. And then hotel security, not targets at all if possible, aka unless they shoot at me, etc. Rebuttals to objections. Objection one is interesting. So he's already kind of planning out for people to just argue with him. Hey, you don't need to do it like this. You don't need the violence. We don't need this to be the case. As a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. As a Jew, can't pretend to know what he should do or not as a Christian. So I'm not going to comment on that. Rebuttal: turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I'm not the person raped in a detention camp. I am not the fisherman executed without a trial. Right? Like I guess he's obviously talking about the fishermen from Venezuela that were allegedly bringing drugs, which turned out to just be like marijuana, and they were going to Colombia, not United States, but they were blown up, obviously without a trial, on the orders of Pete Hegseth, perhaps Marco Rubio too, I believe. I'm sure nothing happened without their say-so anyway. And I'm not a schoolgirl blown up or a child starved or a teenage girl abused by many criminals in this administration. Okay. That is fair. Again, this seems to emphasize, to me at least, the inconsistencies and what seems to be coming to a head, which is America, the homeland, and America, the empire. And the empire has its agenda, which is to survive. And the homeland now, I think, is being woken up to the fact that if it does not act out or act back out, that it will not survive. And I think that just like or a company or a corporation or an institution or a university or a government fights, it's not one individual person. Um, you can't point to one person. If you have a church or a synagogue, if you have a band, right? I mean, think about the Eagles that are still playing now, and you have only a few of their original members. What makes them the Eagles, right? And that's a question that people have very strong feelings about, and I totally get that. America, the homeland, but the name, the Eagles, persists because there's something about the existence of that music, of the name, that regardless of who's playing it, there seems to be something that like wants to keep that entity alive as long as possible. Maybe that's any original founding member, maybe it's a founding member's family. I don't know, and I'm sure that it's a case by case basis. But the point is that America, the homeland, I think that America the homeland and America the empire are coming to a conflict right now because for a long time, America the empire was able to thrive while America the homeland was doing relatively well. And there were obviously little schemes to go ahead and make people think that things were going well. Obviously, and I heard, oh, crap. I don't remember who said this. So don't take this with a grain of salt, but that maybe it was Scott Horton, or Dave Smith, that for the last, I think, 20 years, every presidency's stock performance, S&P 5, whatever it is, performance was always breaking and always at an all-time high. It just keeps on happening because inflation's going up. But there has been a mass deceit of the public in the name of economic. Hey everyone, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, click subscribe and rate the show 5 stars. Helps a ton. Thanks so much. Debt and slavery, I think. And obviously you could talk about the fact that most Americans, I think 40%, I saw the Unusual Whales, that awesome Twitter account posted the other day, that nearly 40% of Americans don't have $500 cash for emergencies. That's crazy. And I actually totally hear that, and I totally feel that. I mean, my life is such a fortune just to be able to kind of be an adult. I just kind of support 2 kids, just to support 3 kids, just to be able to pay your mortgage. And if I mean, by some chance you want to try to scrap together without having family help, or you know, try to scrap together a down payment. I mean, it could take decades based on how much money people are able to put aside. And if you look at where you know, where the money's being spent and where the budget's going, a lot of it is going to America the empire. So what happens is, or what I believe is happening is that this is a civil war not happening in America. This is a civil war between the philosophies of what America is. And these are the actual casualties of war. Same way, and I can't believe that, you know, I'm just putting this together while I'm speaking right now, but the same thing with the missing scientists. You know, I mean, Trump announces a couple of months ago that he's going to, you know, and I mean, I know that it sounds crazy. I know that everyone's kind of, you know, like it sounds like sci-fi, but like this is real. I mean, the Pentagon wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't real, you know, and or at least that there is something to think about. And again, you know, whether or not anyone that is in politics, whether they deserve to be believed at all, is obviously not something that's taken for granted. But there's a reason why these slip ups are happening. There's a reason why people are saying what they're saying. And when Trump says that, you know, Obama gave away classified information by saying the aliens are real, and then goes ahead and orders the declassification of all these documents, and then scientists. That's not true. I mean, you know, because scientists have been disappearing for since 2022, so it hasn't just been happening since then. But I think like four or five have disappeared since then, and like, and again, you know, and obviously we live in a time where all information could kind of be like we have an abundance of information, an abundance more than we could ever dream of, and none of it is completely true. And you can't believe all of anything at face value. And so what you kind of have to do is use that abundance of information and take bits and pieces and try to sort together some kind of narrative that actually, you know, lines up. I actually think that, excuse me, Tim Dillon is incredible at this. I mean, he puts together these incredible narratives, but and he just puts together news and philosophies and perspectives, and is able to kind of blend them all into one coherent story as to what the state of America is today. And it's always changing, and you can see through bullshit like I can't. And one of the reasons why I've spoken about before is because I am very comfortable and I am very satisfied just kind of taking information. I'm not very skeptical. I'm pretty accepting when it comes to information, and I've kind of had to learn to try to be more, at least learn to listen to a couple of different perspectives before I even decide for myself what I think on anything. I'm back. I just took a quick break. I think that I think that, you know, especially when we talk about having to be wary of information that's given to us and that none of it's true. I mean, even this manifesto, we have no idea how doctored it was. We have no idea whether anyone messed around with anything or the way that it was released. And I mean, even the fact that it was partially released already means that someone decided to censor or hold back something or some of it. And I kind of hope the rest of it gets leaked and gets out because I think it's important. It's always interesting to understand because these acts are obviously acts of terror. I don't condone any of them. I don't think obviously, in a perfect world, that would never happen, but I think that at the end of the day, information is information. In order to fix a problem, you have to understand what the problem is, and in order to prevent more attacks like this, I think you gotta understand the motive, and the motive is very clear. The motive is super, super clear, and, you know, the kids that he was talking about was the fact that we initially said that we were going to war in Iran to help liberate the people. And at least according to Glenn Greenwald's journalism or sources that they were using AI assisted rockets, and that was the missile that hit the children's school the first day of the war and killed over 120, mostly school kids. I think that Americans aren't for it. I think unfortunately so many years of war, America the homeland is kind of sick of it, and so America the empire looks like it's on the verge of falling and is doing everything in its power to not fall, everything in its power to stay alive. But at the end of the day, without support of your homeland, of your heart, of the source of your funds, the people that I don't even know whether or not that hold you accountable, but hypothetically hold you accountable, you could demand evidence, then you destroy evidence, and then you just lose more credibility, and then no one's going to support what you do. Now, what does it look like for America, the empire, to fall? You might ask. I think it means that our foreign policy and the people that we have around the world, the military bases, our currency, American dollar, ends up losing value. I think that America, the empire, is about to fall apart, and America, the homeland, is going to need some time to rebuild itself or redevelop itself. And it's gonna take a lot of it's gonna take time because of such a what a precarious economic situation we've put ourselves into. Now, if America, the empire, fails and ceases to become a priority, and America goes from being the world's policeman, which I remember even learning about in middle school. I don't remember if I talked about this in the podcast before. I remember learning about that in middle school in like a history textbook or something, or a social studies textbook. And I was even curious then. I was like, why are we the policemen? Like, who made us the policemen of everyone else? And I remember that foreign policy was explained to us pretty much as there are bad people in the world and we want to make their lives better. So we go there and we help make their lives better. And I never, obviously, I'm in third, fifth, seventh, 10th, ninth, 10th grade. Obviously, this is all getting kind of, I mean, these are the history textbooks. This is American education. So I mean, I don't know whether I'm looking back on it now with my new lens and my new perspective, and therefore ascribing a motive for my train of thought, because I don't think that I was really even thinking very much at that point. I was more thinking about how I hated school and how I want to be home and how I want to be playing basketball and hanging out with my friends. But I did think, like, it's kinda weird that, like, who made America as opposed to, because you also learn about other countries, and you also learn about England, and you also learned about Europe, and you also learned about Russia and China a little bit. You learn about the fact that they exist, you learn about the fact that we had a Cold War and that World War II was, I mean, my World War II education, unfortunately, was primarily around the Holocaust and very little around the actual war, which is obviously important for some reasons and lacking for other reasons. Mainly the fact that if you only focus on one aspect of a world war, then you forget the context of the rest of it and allow history to repeat itself because you haven't learned from it. So once you can obviously, so it's important to revisit a war or revisit the history and try to understand its fullest context. That's actually what I really like about a lot of Daryl Cooper's work. If you listen to the Martyr Made podcast, it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people because he puts himself in everyone's shoes, and individuals, especially people who identify with the tribe or with a particular group or with a particular entity, find it very, very uncomfortable to hear that the entity that they're a part of, the organization, the life, this organism that they're a part of, could do something wrong. And so obviously they have a very vehement response, or almost like an allergic response to any kind of concession that, hey, the way that people that have historically been on my side have acted acted in a way that I'm not comfortable with or think is appropriate, I'll still support the idea if the idea is at its core is good and the way that it's meant, the way that it's carried out is bad. I heard a really, there was actually an awesome, it was a debate. I keep on talking about, I guess, quote unquote, forbidden characters with Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson and the man whoever I just mentioned a minute ago, Daryl Cooper. Sorry about that. And he was having also had this very, very interesting debate, and I kind of wish he would do more of these rather than talk about the war, every 3 times a week. I understand from his perspective why he's doing that, but he had this incredible debate with with a company in San Francisco, I believe, or near Silicon Valley, and the company helps you once you're going through the process of IVF, pick, yeah, with IVF, in vitro fertilization, you get it's artificial insemination, not artificial, but I guess it happens from, externally, outside, not naturally. And you take the healthiest embryos, the ones that have the highest chance of being healthy and thriving and succeeding and living, and you select it. And you could select whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, or if it's going to, maybe some certain characteristics. You could weed out some genetic diseases like or traits like Down syndrome. And Tucker was having this debate with this guy about whether or not we should be able to kind of pick, for example, once we have that information, we also have information as to what the kid's genes look like for height or for eye color, hair color, stuff like that. And Tucker was against the idea, and the guy was essentially saying it's not too different from what we're doing right now. You're not altering any genes. The only possible selection of genes that you can pick from are still from you and your wife, and you're not changing anything. It's just that you have the information that you had before is a little bit more detailed now, and so you could make a little bit more. You as a parent can make more of a decision as to what that's going to be. People don't like that. People say that it's kind of taking God out of the equation. I don't know what I think of it yet. I think I have to think about it a little bit more. But one thing that they were talking about, and this is where it ties into this is where it ties into what I'm talking about the rest of the time is the guest, and I have to pull up his name because I don't want to not do him justice. But here we go. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna pull this up real quickly. Kian Sadeghi, the CEO of Nucleus Genomics. And it's an awesome podcast. You should absolutely listen to it. It's philosophical, it's deep, it's inquisitive, it's speculative about technology and the way that it's implemented throughout society, which is always a really interesting conversation. And um, okay, I forgot his name already. Um, but Kian said there's three pretty much moral outlooks that people have. And I hope I understood this correctly. I definitely understood the first two. I don't think I understood the third, so I'm not going to try and explain it and do a bad job with it. But the first idea was it's basically consequentialism, and that is the concept that if it turns out okay, then everything along the way is justified. That kind of is the way of the Americans right now, I feel like, and the way that America has been implementing any kind of policy for at least as long as I've been following politics, so maybe the last 7, 8 years. Then, and I kind of heard that sentiment phrased by Carmelo Anthony one time when, and this was kind of always his mentality throughout his career, whether he was on the Nuggets or whether he was on the Knicks or actually, I got to see him in one of his first games on the Trailblazers, which was a ton of fun in Portland. And that place loved him, by the way. I mean, there was so much love and respect for him. But he was known for being an audacious kind of guy. He would take these high risk, quote unquote, clutch shots. He would put himself into relatively precarious situations on the court. And he said in an interview one time, he goes, "There's no such thing as a bad shot that goes in." And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that there's absolutely such a thing as a bad shot that goes in. And that actually leads into the next type of philosophy, which is that we have no real control over the outcome. And the only thing that we could really control are the means of how we get there. And yeah, you can kind of plan for something or plot for something, but realistically, and I think that if one thing has been made clear in the last 10 years, 15 years of our lives on planet Earth, it is that man plans, God laughs. It is impossible. It's next to impossible to predict what the heck is going on and what the heck is going to go on. And so, what the moral philosophy would be is we can't really, we could try and steer the ship in the direction that we want it to go. But ultimately, it's more important and most important that the way that we get there is done in a moral way. I definitely fall into that second camp as far as my temperament, my philosophy. It's kind of always the way that I was. I never really cared very much about winning or losing, as opposed to feeling like it was close, it was competitive, it was fun. I burned myself out of effort, and like the worst feelings ever, whether you're playing basketball, whether you're rolling jujitsu, whether you're in school, whether you're doing your job and like you're just going through a slump and you really feel like, yeah, I'm kind of passing through, but I'm definitely not living up to the standards of what I'm able to contribute and what I'm able to do. But because the standards are lower than what I'm capable of, I'm just going to kind of lower myself down to the bare minimum and get away with that. And I really, really try. That's one philosophy that scares the life out of me, scares the crap out of me. And I work really, really hard to the best of my ability, not live like that, to say that whatever, I don't know what my life is going to end up looking like. I don't know what the podcast is going to turn into. I don't know what my family is going to end up looking like. I don't know what I'm going to look like in 10 years from now. I know that every step along the way is gonna be intentional. I know I'm gonna put my all into the day to day because if I'm not putting into my all into the day to day, then what the hell's going on? What am I even doing here? And people are afraid of success, myself included, and people are afraid to find out what happens exactly when you kinda outsmart the system, or what happens when you realize that your job doesn't really mean as much as what you think it does, or it doesn't even require your full capabilities and your potential is so much more, and how come you're not achieving that? And what's filling your time instead of you achieving that? And what's pulling at you? I mean, we're a nation that is addicted. We're a nation that is divided and captured. And again, oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to finish the point that I was making about Tucker in this debate. The American empire tends to look at decisions, and I think a lot of people within America do too. I'm not trying to make this like a good guy, bad guy kind of thing. I think that, like everything in life, there are tensions between philosophies where some aspects of it ring true and some of them have a second side to it that is not necessarily great, not not really good, right? And I mean, you can say that, man. I mean, I don't even have to give examples. I think that if you're listening to this and you're even slightly aware of the last 20, 25, 30 years of American or world history, I think that what I'm saying generally tends to ring true. And so what our values have to be, and I think that, and it's funny because that's the sentiment you hear a lot of times from people that are trying to preserve themselves, are the ends justify the means. It's all for the greater good. You don't really hear individual great people say that. You don't really hear people that understand the concept of accountability and responsibility say the ends justify the means in the same way, because I think that either if they've lived their life through that, they would know that that's not the case. And if they're not ready to admit that yet, then they're certainly afflicting that perspective on the next generation, whether it's their kids, whether it's the people that are working for them, whether it's their students. But the people that focus on that look inward, they say this is absolutely not acceptable. you know, it is absolutely not acceptable to say that you're going to liberate a people and blow up a school with 120 kids in it. And I'm not justifying anything that this guy did. I'm not condoning it. And I think he was wrong. And I think that Cole Allen, or whatever his name is wrong. It is and was wrong. And I think he is a manifestation of some very, very real sentiments. The interesting thing to me is that it's pretty clear that as far as the empire is concerned, it's pretty easy to tell who they are. The corporations that benefit from the comfort of being able to essentially rule over other countries and economies, banks, corporate news, pharmaceutical industry, obviously, the military industrial complex, obviously, the energy and oil companies, obviously. All of these people embody and make up, and obviously there's loads more, and there's loads that I'm not even aware of, and there's loads I'm sure that the more home, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, and I don't doubt that there is more than a lifetimes. There's several lifetimes of investigation and learning to do on these topics, on the topic of America, the empire versus America, the homeland. But those people aren't the people, those entities, those industries, the very, very short term Friedman esque economic policy of short term gains as a corporate shareholder responsibility at all other expenses is a philosophy, an economical philosophy that clearly seems to have failed. Case in point, it's not the best thing because, and especially when corporations aren't regulated and aren't subject to public scrutiny the same way that government is, they don't have the same responsibility to answer a FOIA act. They don't have the same responsibility to, appear before the Senate or Congress. And then, even if they're never held accountable, they're on the record for the rest of time supporting whatever agenda they're supporting. And people will know that for all time. And whether they're not actually held accountable, that still echoes, that still rings. And it feels like we're at the verge of a breaking point. And I think that comes to show you, or that comes to show us, that the moral philosophy of consequentialism is probably not the best one, or at least one that works for America, that works for for a country as enormous as America, an empire as enormous as America. The country of America is big enough that we do need some time to rebuild, and I think it could happen very quickly. I started saying this earlier, but I mean, think about all the budget and all the money that goes abroad in any capacity, you know, and people are upset about cutting off aid. I think that if we drove through Michigan and Wisconsin, the flyover states, we go to New York, we go to Florida, we go to, Florida, which was so hot for, for 3 or 4 years, already is too expensive for people to keep on coming down to. And California, I mean, even Seattle, Washington, which most people really don't, I mean, most people that I've interacted with in my life don't know much about or have much to do with, or, really feel like it's one of the big quote unquote American cities. It's unaffordable. It's crazy. I would have loved to buy a home in Seattle. It would have been awesome to move to Washington State. And I lived there for a year, and I had the best time of my life, and I'm going back this summer. And you can't afford to live there, and so, I mean, you're looking at the poverty, you're looking at the poverty in the flyover states and the inaffordability of the coastal states and the border states. I guess those are the ones you could kinda go to. I mean, if someone wants to move to Montana, someone wants to move to Texas, someone wants to move, to Michigan, upstate New York, you could do it. And those are also, by the way, they're awesome places for sure. But they're not I mean, but as far as cutting foreign aid, drive around and see what Americans need aid. Drive around to Asheville, North Carolina, which is an enormously liberal city and filled with very cool, hippie, vibrant, creative, albeit expensive vibes. The brewery district, the fashion district, the arts, the music there. There's incredible music. They have what's the name of the Biltmore, the Biltmore Hotel, which is really incredible. You have the mountains all around you, and those people need help. Those people need aid. And one of the tribal things that I think, one of the things that are valuable about tribal, one of the aspects of being part of a community, whether it's a country or a religion, is that you help out those that are closest to you if you can, how you can, and then you keep on helping outward and outward and outward, more and more and more and more. And if you're lucky enough to be able to support those that are closest to you, and you still have leftover, you still need more work, then great, go ahead and keep helping other people out. but it's gotten to the point where there seems to be this inherent conflict, and most American people at this point are so tired and are so overworked and are so isolated and are feeling. I mean, everyone I talk to about Epstein and everyone I talk to about even like the UFO stuff recently, and I'm talking to, Orthodox Jews and very skeptical, sober-minded people of a lot of these kind of things, and not even sober-minded because they're more skeptical than they are believing, and people just don't know what to do with the information that we're getting now. And what's interesting is the development of the would-be Trump assassins, where for the first one during his presidential run while he was campaign felt, one way. It could have been someone from the left. It could have been someone from the deep state who is threatening to dismantle. Could have been whoever. I don't know, another country, right? The second time seemed to kind of have been tied in with Ukraine somehow and some real deep state thing. And now this seems to really be like in the same spirit of, again, I said this before, like the Luigi Mangione guy, where he says, "What are you doing? You guys are not accountable, and you're killing us, and you are making us feel and look terrible." And again, whether you agree with this guy politically or not, whether like whether or not you obviously you should not condone this. But what do you think is going to happen? I don't know. Like 14 scientists are missing. Whistleblowers. There's a whistleblower that was supposed to report to Congress the other day, found of a drug overdose. So this guy that was, had access to top clearance, classified information, was going to, be go through the proper whistleblowing channels. After, by the way, assuming that he has Trump's approval, even because Trump posted that he wanted to release this information. So it looks like he has support from the administration. Ends up dead by drug overdose. Is this guy a druggie? Is this guy a drug addict? Is this guy, I mean, 2 weeks beforehand? Now, it's hard to speculate because I think that humans are humans. And I would be, for example, terrified. I'm terrified of even recording this kind of stuff and talking about this stuff. I'm a scared person in general. I've talked about that before. This guy just happens to be, a drug addict. Let me pull up um, what the article I saw about that said. Okay, this seems to be a New York Post article. The Air Force intelligence officer and would-be UFO whistleblower Matthew James Sullivan passed away from an alleged overdose. Coincidentally, he was about to testify about the UAP phenomenon. This is the 23rd UAP whistleblower who has mysteriously passed away. According to the Northern Virginia Medical Examiner, the cause was ruled by accidental drug overdose, a fatal mix of alcohol, Xanax or alprazolam, uh, okay, I'm not going to say the pharmaceutical name, but muscle relaxant, and imipine. Imipine. I don't know what that is. Sorry. Sullivan had deep experience across Air Force Intelligence Agency, National Air and Space Intelligence Center, and NSA. He claimed involvement in the government's secret legacy UFO program, a crash retrieval operations, and said he had personally seen non-human craft in U.S. possession. Weeks before his death, he agreed to testify before Congress in November 2024 to blow the lid off the program. Representative Eric Burleson, a Republican from Missouri, called the timing of grave concern and referred the case to the FBI, who is sure to be on top of it with Cash Patel out the door, citing suspicious circumstances, potential foul play, and national security risks. Yeah, yeah. But, you know, nothing to look at over here. Nothing to look at over here. I don't know. This is nuts. This is nuts. And we're kind of heading towards this. There is going to be some kind of reckoning, some kind of climax when people feel like they have really nothing else to lose. It's really interesting. I was actually thinking about this from a different perspective, but this applies to this conversation for sure. Our sense of morality, our morality could deepen based on our level of security and comfort. So, in places, for example, where everyone has plenty of food, someone stealing a slice of pizza is not the biggest deal in the world and probably will be looked at as a misdemeanor. Whereas if you're in a society where a missing slice of pizza could be the difference between whether a kid makes it or not, and whether or not, and obviously that's a extremely dramatic case, but I'm just making it for case in point that the moral consequences of someone stealing food is going to be much graver. We have, I think, been Americans have been particularly tolerant of the fact that our politicians have been so full of crap because at the end of the day, everyone could kind of still point to a system, a route to success and say, listen, like whatever they're doing, like I don't like it. I don't like it any more than you do, whatever it is. But I'm fine. There's nothing really for me to fight, like, okay, fine, I'll vote the other way next time, as if that'll make a difference. Or I'll post about it on social media as if that makes a difference. But when things become more extreme, when people are when gas is so expensive, when people feel a form of economic slavery between debt. Nearly 40% of Americans said they have less than $500 in cash savings. That's one point, and then the second point was the number of Americans using buy now, pay later for groceries has more than doubled in the last 2 years as per The Hill. Um, yeah, that's when morality starts to become a little bit less liberal. And that's when behavior begins to become more extreme. And when politics and politicians go from screwing people's pockets to their kids or trafficking their daughters, that's a different level of morality. That's a different level, and I think that it's gonna keep on going on. The Lending Tree survey covered by The Hill showing 29% of users now financing food purchases versus 14% previously. Gen Z leads in trend at 38%. Gen Z, 38% of them, almost 40 almost 4 out of 10 people can't afford to pay their grocery bills, which is why they're paying on buy now, pay later. That's not an economy. And so the empire keeps on trying to do its thing, and it's starting to get a lot of pushback. And you want cooler heads to prevail, but when driven to such extremes, I don't know that that's going to be the case. And I want people to come together, and I want good conversations, and I want healthy conversations, but you can't be surprised when something like this happens. Anyway, some food for thought. Just posting about this because this all happened last night, and I had a lot going around in my head about this. And we will see you in another 5 episodes. 3 more episodes coming this week, I hope. Guys, hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'm going to read the full manifesto that was just released, I just came across. And if you want to hear the full manifesto and not the short summary that I posted earlier in the episode or I started elaborating on, here we go. Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for, quote, most wanted, unquote. I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had a personal emergency, open parentheses. By the time anyone reads this, I probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, but can hardly call that not a self inflicted status, close parentheses. I apologize to all the people I traveled next to, all the workers who handled my luggage, and all the other non targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who was abused and or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all those who may still suffer after, regardless of my success or failure. I don't expect forgiveness, but if I could have seen any other way to get this close, I would have taken it. Again, my sincere apologies. On to why I did any of this. I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me. and I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and a traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Well, to be completely honest, sorry, parentheses. Well, to be completely honest, I was no longer willing a long time ago, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. Close parentheses. While I'm discussing this, I'll probably go over my expected rules of engagement, probably in a terrible format, but I'm not military, so too bad. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel. They are targets, prioritized from highest ranking to lowest, which is crazy that Kash Patel was not included in his list of administration officials. Maybe because he knows that he's going to be fired soon, and so he's not, actively involved. I don't know. Or maybe there's another reason. I don't know. Secret Service. They are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible, aka I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. Hotel security, not targets at all if possible, aka unless they shoot at me. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be using a buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls. I would still go through most everyone here to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary on the basis that most people choose to attend a speech by a pedophile, rapist, and traitor and are thus complicit, but I really hope it doesn't come to that. Rebuttals to objections. Objection 1. As a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. Rebuttal. Turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I'm not the person raped in a detention camp. I'm not the fisherman executed without trial. I'm not the school kid blown up or a child starved or a teenage girl abused by many criminals in this administration. Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It is complicity in the oppressor's crimes. Objection 2. This is not a convenient time for you to do this. Rebuttal. I need whoever thinks this way to take a couple of minutes and realize that the world isn't about them. Do you realize when I see someone raped or murdered or abused, I should walk? Do you think, rather, that when I see someone raped, murdered, or abused, I should walk on by because it would be inconvenient for people who aren't the victim? This was the best timing and chance of success I could have come up with. Objection 3, you didn't get them all. Rebuttal, got to start somewhere. Objection 4, as a half black, half white person, you shouldn't be the one doing this. Rebuttal, I don't see anyone else picking up the slack. Objection number 5, yield unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. Rebuttal, the United States of America are ruled by the law, not by any one or several people. Insofar as representatives and judges do not follow the law, no one is required to yield them anything so unlawfully ordered. I would also like to extend my appreciation to a great many people since I will not be likely to be able to talk to them again unless the Secret Service is astoundingly incompetent. Thank you to my family, both personal and church, for your love over these 31 years. Thank you to my friends for your companionship over many years. Thank you to my colleagues over many jobs for your positivity and professionalism. Thank you for my students for your enthusiasm and love of learning. Thank you to the many acquaintances I've met in person and online for short interactions and long term relationships, for your perspectives and inspiration. Thank you all for everything. Sincerely, Cole Cold Force, Friendly Federal Assassin Allen. P.S. Now that all that sappy stuff is done, what the hell is Secret Service doing? Sorry, gonna rant a bit here and drop the formal tone. Like I expected hotel cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got, who knows, maybe they're pranking me, is nothing. No damn security, not in transport, not in the hotel, not in the event. Like the one thing that I immediately noticed walking to the hotel is the sense of arrogance. I walk in with multiple weapons and not a single person there considers the possibility that I could be a threat. The security at the event is all outside, focused on protesters and current arrivals because apparently no one thought about what happens if someone checks in the day before. Like, this level of incompetence is insane, and I very sincerely hope it's corrected by the time this country actually gets competent leadership again. Like, if I were a Iranian agent instead of an American citizen, I could have brought a damn MA deuce, whatever that is, in here, and no one would have noticed shit. Actually insane. Oh, and if anyone is curious about how doing something like feels, it's awful. I want to throw up. I want to cry for all the things I want to do and never will, for all the people whose trust this betrays. I experience rage thinking about everything this administration has done. Can't really recommend it. Stay in school, kids. That is the full manifesto of the gunman Cole Allen, as obtained by the New York Post. Take with that as you will.